We have a very special guest in the Economic War Room today. It's amazing. Someone I've known for about 10 years. When he worked in the Defense Intelligence Agency, he was briefly the National Security Advisor until the deep state forced the president to remove him, essentially. And he went up against everything, fought the legal battles, but he stood strong. He's remained loyal to America. He's actually remained loyal to President Trump as well. He's an amazing guy. He's known it from the inside of the intelligence community. I welcome Lieutenant General Mike Flynn.
Thanks. How you doing today? It's great to see you, as always. I mean, I know we've been in touch for so many years, but and I have such extraordinary respect for everything you do now. And of course, how we got connected was, I forget whatever book it was, but I know I read it, and it was The Secret Weapon or something like that. Yeah, right. Secret Weapon, and then we got connected when I brought you over to DIA to basically present to our team there, you know. And we were just chatting for the audience. We were just chatting briefly about, you know, other people that are in our lives, because one of the things that I learned in war, on the battlefield, in combat, particularly in the jobs that I had, was how the money flow was affecting the enemy. And when I started to look at it, then I started to realize, well, it's a big circle coming right back to us. And that's when I really began to look at warfare vastly different. You know, not just from the physical aspects of war, but also the economic conditions of war, but also the economic advantages for those that love. I say love war, and you know, I'm not one of those. I don't love war at all. I'm not anti-war. I'm just anti-stupid war. But anyway, I mean, it's been this is great being in your studio here, and what a wonderful place.
Well, and the whole notion, in 2008, I wrote the book Secret Weapon about the 2008 financial crisis. Mm-hmm. And that was the October surprise. It was actually a September surprise that year. On September 11th, 7 years to the day after 9/11, we found sovereign wealth funds in the Middle East attacking American banks, particularly Jewish banks like Goldman Sachs. Bear Stearns had already gone down, Lehman Brothers. They came under fire. And I traced it back. It was Yusuf Qaradawi in Qatar who was pulling the trigger. They were manipulating our market. Phase one was they ramped up oil prices by buying in the futures market oil. You're a producer, you don't buy futures, you sell them. Right. And then secondly, they went after the brokerage houses like Lehman Brothers, caused them to go bankrupt. And in fact, they controlled Barclays Bank at the time, and they prevented Barclays from buying Lehman, but then they bought the assets out of bankruptcy. And then the phase three was they were going to attack the US dollar. But that was the surprise. The October surprise in 2008 that put Barack Obama in the White House was a financial terror attack. What kind of October surprise, September surprise do you think is going to happen this year?
Yeah, wow. So, you know, we chatted a little bit about, you know, the whole BRICS consortium, and
Brazil, Russia, India, China, so South Africa.
There's a couple of other potential scenarios that we will see play out between now and the election in November. You know, the likelihood or possibility of another disease, and you know, an H5N6 or something, you know, the bird flu, right?
The bird flu, right. We talked to Peter McCullough about that.
Yeah, I mean, the war in the Middle East is it's just brewing. Israel is in a very, very difficult spot. Israel is not fighting to win any longer. Israel is fighting to survive. Israel's survival is at risk.
And you've got a flag pin. American flag is the Israel flag.
Yeah. So like I just said, Israel is not. They're not. This is not about winning. This is about surviving. So that's another potential scenario that could happen. But the bigger one that's already in play, and the U.S. administration has already, you know, Biden has already signed off on an executive order 2.5 years ago. People can go look it up. Executive Order 14067 is the number, and it has to do with central bank digital currency. So I've been reading all the different executive orders that this administration has signed, as well as they eliminated everything that Trump ever wrote or signed off on. But the one that got me the most, got my attention the most, was Executive Order 14067, an area that I should really not know that much about, and I have learned quite a bit about. And this is on this central bank digital currency.
Yeah, it's frightening.
So, because what I'll jump into here is, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, which represent about 47% of the world's population. There's about another 25 nations that have joined this consortium, and that
including
BRICS,
potentially Saudi Arabia.
Definitely, not potentially, definitely. So you have these 5 plus this 25. So you're looking at about somewhere between 80 and 90% of the world's population of the nation states that have economies on the planet. And so the United States is not part of this consortium yet, although the executive order that I just talked about, we have been playing in this sandbox all along. So we're moving, this administration is moving this country towards a digital currency system, which is a globalist system. And if we move in that direction, then the US dollar, as you well know, will no longer be the currency of choice for global trade on the world market. And you'll move to more of a gold standard, which we're not on the gold standard yet. Gold is probably at $2,400 an ounce. Gold could go as high, and I've been told by some really sharp people that know this business, if we shift away from the US dollar in October, so the next summit for the BRICS nations is October. Russia is the lead at the head of the table this go around. So it's an October surprise. Normally it's the Democrats pulling the rug out from underneath the Republicans, or the Republicans pulling out the rug out from underneath the Democrats. In this case, it's this globalist consortium that's going to have an October surprise that will be not able to be controlled by the party system, the two-party system primarily that we have in our country. So it's going to be very interested in how this plays out, and that is something I think that everybody needs to be prepared for.
Well, we have a $35 trillion debt. It was $32 trillion a year ago at this time. Now it's $35 trillion. We're adding $1 trillion every 3 or 4 months on the debt. So we're absolutely vulnerable. And Vladimir Putin is certainly aware of that. I was there in 2006. I think you were there after that. But they're very plain in this. All right, we're going to need to take a break. When we come back, I want to explain what central bank digital currency really means and how it can impact individual wallets and our ability to buy and sell goods here in America. We'll be right back after the break. In uncertain times, finding stability in the economy can feel challenging. But what if you could navigate economic volatility while honoring your biblical values? At Timothy Plan, they believe this balance is possible. Timothy Plan filters its volatility-weighted ETFs and family of mutual funds through a biblical pro-life and pro-family lens, so you can see competitive returns and moral responsibility, helping you to weather the economic storms. With Timothy Plan, align your investments with your values while adapting to our ever-changing culture. Since 1994, Timothy Plan has been recognized leader in biblically responsible investing. Timothy Plan, your bridge between faith, finances, and the future. Visit timothyplan.com or call 1-800-TIM-PLAN or 1-800-846-7526. Investing includes risk, including possible loss of principal. Before investing, carefully consider a fund's investment objectives, risks, charges, and expenses contained in the prospectus available at timothyplan.com.
Throughout history, the spirit of patriotism has prevailed. The battles may have changed, but the values remain the same. Today, in 2024, we find ourselves at a pivotal moment where the call for unity, freedom, and a better future echoes louder than ever. For more than 10 years, Patriot Mobile has been committed to supporting the values that make our nation great. With affordable plans and reliable nationwide coverage, Patriot Mobile is not just a wireless service. It's a call to action for those who believe in the American dream. Because this year is not just any year, it's the most important year since our nation's founding. Choose a wireless carrier that shares your values. Choose Patriot Mobile.
We're talking with Lieutenant General Flynn. We're talking about central bank digital currency, a potential October surprise. Would the BRICS nations literally pull the rug out under the American dollar right before the election? I believe that the Middle East and Russia pulled the rug out from under America in 2008. And then we've conducted economic warfare against Russia in the Ukraine battle and so forth. Would they do it again? Do you think that they could do it?
Number one, they can do it. Number two, they will do it. The timing and how long they describe they want this thing to play out. Whether it plays out over the course of a year, and then once it does, then we move into a completely different world. And I actually think that that's the end of the economic system that the U.S. has controlled since really since post World War II, but definitely since about the early 1970s when we went to the U.S. dollar as the currency, right?
Yeah. So Bretton Woods,
off the
or
gold
Nixon,
standard, right?
Off the gold standard.
One of the things that you talked about in the last segment at the very end, and this is for your audience. Although your audience, I suspect is like really smart. They listen to you because they're trying to learn something about economic conditions. But I can tell you, for the rest of America, people they glaze over when we go, we're $35 trillion debt, or 30, whatever it is, whatever the debt is today. The American people have no idea what that means anymore. We've been saying $1 trillion of debt for 10, 20 years. The American people, okay, I got it. I got to go mow my lawn. I got to go buy some milk. I got to make the eggs. So I think what everybody needs to understand is that the U.S. economy has been the economy of choice for everybody to kind of go and hang around, right? It's kind of like, the place you like to go, and the place that the world has liked to go is to the United States of America economy. If there's one store on the planet, that's the store they all wanted to go to. And what's happened in this realm of new type of currency, digital currency is part of it, and you can talk about all the other types of currency, the Bitcoin, all that kind of stuff. Because it's like most Americans, they don't have a clue.
Money to them is a dirty green piece of paper with a dead president's picture on it.
And it's been that way for a long time. It's been that way for the most part for most of my life, right? So I think where we're heading, and we're going to head there before this election. And the United States is not in the driver's seat right now. This BRICS consortium, when you talk about 50% of the world's population, you talk about an economic consortium, as well as these are also nations. Russia and India have extraordinary military-to-military agreements and sort of a military-industrial complex component between them. China and Russia, same. When you think about South Africa and the way South Africa has really morphed over the last 25 years. South Africa has gone from one type of system and one type of society to a completely different type of system and society. So now you throw in additional countries in the Muslim world, countries in the OPEC world, right? France is probably on the edge, and I think we're going to see France probably do a little backroom sign off on the BRICS, only because of Macron, and Macron is a massive globalist. So the competition that we are heading into is I always say there is a spiritual component to the war that we are in, because this is good versus evil. And so for the audience, in the sort of the long arc of history, good always triumphs. It's just how much time it takes sometimes. It can take a long time. It can take 1,000 years, right? And I can go through a litany of empires that have lasted a long time, much longer than the United States of America. So in the history of empires, over from the Byzantine Empire to now, the American Empire, are we at the end? Is this the end of an experiment of an empire that was based on an experiment called something called the Constitution, and sort of, I believe, God ordained. And so I say all that because the consortium that we're facing, that we're talking about right now, this BRICS consortium, they do not have God at the center, okay? And so they don't have the consciousness and the ideals and the values that I have. And I'm speaking for myself, but I think I speak for tens of millions of Americans. So they don't have God at the center of who they are and what they want and what they see as the future of the world. And their idea is to build on what they have already been talking about. And one of the funny things is, and you probably would know more about this, and I'm not going to put you on the spot about it, but during the Obama administration, China was allowed into the World Bank. It's like 2012 or something like that. I think it was after his second victory. But he allowed them inside the World Bank because they were treated as like a third world nation. They couldn't get, when you're talking about loans and such like that. So Obama allowed them in. And when he did, they took advantage of it. And they, the creation of the World Bank, which has been around a while, but then all of a sudden this consortium moved in, and boy, now you're able to work together.
World Bank, International Monetary Fund, World Health Organization, they have infiltrated. Right. In fact, I met the number 2 at the World Bank in the DIA. He was there debating me on whether China was good or bad. So, a
communist.
Yes.
He was a communist.
You mentioned, though, the fate of empires and the history of empires. This guy named Tytler wrote the nature, the cycle of empires. If it's a democracy, they always die when people learn that they can vote themselves largesse out of the public treasury. Sure. And the end of Rome was when they debased the currency. Yep. Over a 200-year period from 64 AD to 264 AD, they took a 95% silver denarius and turned it into a 5% or less silver denarius. What you're describing is maybe the end of the American dollar as the October surprise, which takes us from being the most important nation in the world to just another country.
Yeah, and quickly, because I know we're going to come to a break here in a bit. Trump has already come out and said what he's going to do to this digital currency, right? He's already said, I'm not going to allow this. Basically, you elect me, I'm not going to allow this. And so you're talking about half to more of the world's population, large nation states, very smart leaders, and they're not going to allow that. So they're not going to allow a strong president, a strong leader to come in and do that. So they're going to make these decisions, I think, and I believe that they're making them now. They're just going to put the stamp on in October.
Well, if we have that, that'll be a frightening October surprise. We are going to need to take another break. When we come back, we'll wrap up with maybe some hopeful things. What can America do? We'll be right back after the break. Here's a $10 bill. It's got the picture of Alexander Hamilton on the front of it. It's kind of sad. When I was 10 years old, everything that I could buy for $1 now costs about $10. That's the cost of inflation. It's just paper. It's not backed by anything. You can't exchange it for gold and silver. You used to, but you can't do that anymore. And that's unfortunate. Pirates wouldn't accept this. Pirates, they wanted gold and silver. Patriots, the founders of this nation, also wanted gold and silver coin. In fact, they put a provision in the Constitution, 17 words, that said states could only make gold and silver coins tender within the states. That's why I wrote this new book, Pirate Money, Discovering the Founders' Hidden Plan for Economic Justice and Defeating the Great Reset. It will explain exactly the history of money and exactly why gold and silver coins can be made modern with new technology and a useful monetary system. PirateMoneyBook.com. General Flynn, we've been talking about a potential October surprise. Whether it happens this October or March, it's inevitable. I agree with you. It's inevitable. The other nations of the world, because you don't have to trade in American dollars. It really is antiquated, in a sense, for Brazil to purchase something from China and to convert to American dollars. Right. We need the world to want dollars because we have this massive debt, and who's going to buy the debt? Right. But the rest of the world doesn't necessarily need the American dollar anymore.
Yeah, they don't. And I think people, we've taken that for granted. We've been complacent in this strength of our economy. That's why I said earlier about the trillions of dollars of debt that we've been talking about that, and yet we're still like out
if you
there
have to
with
pay
money.
the interest on it,
Yeah.
it's a lot of money,
Yeah.
and the interest on it will consume all of our income taxes.
And the American people don't realize that they're paying the interest on it.
Right.
They just don't know that. I mean, it's like, okay, I got it. I got to go buy my eggs, right?
Yeah.
So,
But de Gaulle called this an exorbitant privilege of America, and we've abused the privilege for 50 years.
Yeah, it's just like, so, I'm going to get, sort of put my Christian hat on here, because there's a complacency in the Christian community, just like there's a complacency just, feeling like, we're always going to be a strong nation.
Right.
Okay? That complacency that has caused an atrophy and a moral decline, a moral decay in our society has placed us in a position right now of weakness. And that weakness is seen in the types of leaders that we have put into political office, like we were just talking about Rome. I mean, the same sort of thing with Athens. There's a lot of similarities in the collapse of empires when they come to the end. And one of them is overextension of their military, extraordinary debt, greed, right? I mean, that's a deadly sin, right? So if those that are listening and watching, you go look up at the 7 deadly sins, we're getting an A+ for every single one of them. A+, every single deadly sin. So we as Americans, so what to do?
Yeah,
right?
what do we do about it?
So we as Americans, what we have to do is at this point in time, the founders of our country, they did not sit there and argue about what the federal government needed to look like. That was not their initial argument. Their initial argument was, what rights do we give to individuals, right? Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Big argument. Life wasn't as much argued, because if you didn't have life, you had nothing else. So got to have life. Liberty, easy. Pursuit of happiness, there was a lot more arguing about it, but they argued about what individuals needed to have first. That was the most important foundational element that you find in our Constitution, in our laws. It's about protecting the individual. And yet, what we've done is we've taken and completely flipped our government because of all the things that I just mentioned about complacency, and we have allowed the federal government to kind of usurp, what it was that we were created to do, to basically have individual rights and responsibilities.
Right.
The bigger word there is responsibilities. The second thing that the founders did in their argument was they argued for states. Then they said, okay, I'm one of the 13 original states, and I'm going to argue about what does Rhode Island need? What does South Carolina need? I still want to have my own sovereignty, right? And they have some incredible state constitutions that are and some of them, they're built on the Magna Carta of the 1200s, right? So people don't understand that. And then they argued a bit at the end about, well, what should the federal government do? You had some foreign diplomacy you had to do. One of the interesting things for most people that don't know is that in our Constitution, it does say that we will maintain a Navy from a military perspective. It doesn't say we'll maintain an Army and an Air Force and all these other things. Nope. It just says we must maintain a Navy, and I think the verbiage is, in time of war, we will, essentially create a militia or stand up an army of sorts, but we don't have to have that. But that doesn't mean that I don't want it. I'm just telling you what is in our Constitution. Right. These are small things that they needed at the federal level. What we've done, and this is why I say, the people, we tend to blame Washington, D.C. for all of our problems, right? We tend to blame up. And instead of actually looking at what have we been doing, what responsibilities have we taken as citizens, where the founders gave us extraordinary latitude and extraordinary rights, and that meant that we have to have, as citizens of a great, nation, we have to be responsible for exercising those things and taking some responsibility to do that. Meaning, one of them is the vote. So when we have, to put it in the perspective of today, when we have in our Republican primaries less than 35% national turnout, in the Republican primaries right now, less than 35% nationwide, with all of the craziness that's going on, all of the potential uncertainty, and I'm like, what's going on? So are you waiting for something? Are the American people waiting for something? Because I guarantee, and I bet a dime to a dollar, because the last, I think, 8 presidential elections, we had less than 65% for the general election, less than 65% turnout. And that means that there are, 35% of people who are registered who could vote do not. So there's a complacency. That's why I talk about, when we tend to throw the blame up at Washington, D.C., we put these people there. So what we have to do is we have to look at ourselves. We have to say to ourselves, look, how am I getting involved? How am I serving my community? How am I serving my church? How am I serving my county? How am I serving my local town? Am I involved? Am I volunteering? Am I participating as a citizen and doing the things that a citizen should do in order to protect the future of the republic of this country and to protect the future as I look and I see my children and I see my grandchildren. I go to fill up my gas tank and I'm paying, 3 or 4 or 5 times as much for gas on a monthly basis. I mean, and I don't care what party you're in, that still costs the same. So I want people to understand that from my perspective, you got to get involved. I use this phrase, local action has a national impact. So you got to get involved. That's number one. Trust me when I say that, because I've been around this country many, many times over the last couple of years, last 3 years, at least 3 or 4 times, completely around the country, and have talked to tens of thousands of Americans, and the American people are not done. The American people are fired up. They're not done. But I want to remind people, you got to get out there and you got to participate. And one of the rights, one of the privileges that we were given was the chance to be equal at one moment in time, and that's when you vote.
That's fantastic. We've got to get involved locally. We've got to get involved first, get yourself involved, then get your family involved, and then go out from there. I think it's a brilliant strategy. General Flynn has just laid it out for us. Now we're going to summarize everything that we've talked about here, and we'll give you links and backup data and everything else, and we'll put it in our free economic battle plan. You can get a copy of this at economicwarroom.com. You sign up there, sign up for the battle plans, and we'll send you an email a week. It'll cover this topic or next week's topic or whatever. Now remember, what we see as a marketplace, our enemies view as a battle space. This is Kevin Freeman from the Economic War Room.